Hello friends, and welcome back. I seem to always have a Westie on the books, so I thought we would take the time and focus on how to get a nice cute Westie pet face. So let's get started on Tyler here. On a show Westie, the head is stripped, but on our pets it's just quicker and easier to do a clippered head. That means the hair is going to be soft and floppy, so we're going to do our best to give it the cutest expression and the most iconic Westie head we can with what we have. Starting from the occiput, which is that little nub on the back of the skull, I'm going to take my A clipper comb and I'm going to go over the top of the head, and then I'm going to also go down the sides of the cheeks here, kind of towards the nose. You can totally scissor it all the way around, but this just speeds up the process a little bit. Once we finish our sides, we're going to go from the muzzle to the neck. I'm also going to go backwards in where the throat is, right here in this pocket. It helps keep a cleaner look for the head. The last thing we want is our Westie to have a double chin. With that all done, I'm going to switch over to my smaller clippers and I'm going to tip these ears. I personally like my clippers set to a 15, but a 10 is pretty typical. Typically, the tip of the ear is 1/3 of the size of the ear. When in doubt, aim towards a smaller tip rather than a larger tip. If you end up doing a head size smaller than the 8 guard comb, let's say a 0 guard comb or a 1 guard comb, the tip of your ear might be larger to compensate for that round head. Now that my clipper work is all done, I'm going to start on my scissor work. I'm going to brush all of the top of the hair towards the tip of the nose, and I'm going to grab my favorite curves, working from corner of eye to corner of eye to build a really nice visor across the front of the dog. Once I get to the corner of the eye, I'm slowly going to blend off by rotating my scissors so the curve is the opposite way, and I'm going to go about 1 inch past the eyes to kind of open up that expression. Once finished with the visor, I then focus on the outer circle of the head. This will be the first circle of 3 that we focus on. I'm going to clean up the edges of my tipped ears so that way I know where my circle needs to come in and meet to the top of the head. We don't want our Westie to look like a Bashan, so we want to make sure those tips are sticking out and they're present in the expression. You can get really clean tips by brushing all of that hair in the opposite direction of the tip. Remember that when you're scissoring ears, the tips of your shears should always be pointed into the direction of the tip of the ear. The way the hair grows, it naturally pushes the shears away from the leather of the ear. When the tips of your ears point towards the base of the ear, the way that the hair grows, it actually pulls the scissor towards the ear leather. A long-time groomer can get away with this with a dog that they know really, really well. But for newer groomers or groomers that have dogs that they're not as familiar with, I always recommend tip to tip. To get the cleanest of edges, sometimes it takes a few pulling of the hairs back and forth to make sure that you've grabbed every single one that's trying to hide from you. With our tips all cleaned, let's work on the roundness of the head. I'm going to start by combing everything down and working from chin up to the outer edge of the ear. Of course, for a circle, I'm going to grab my curved shears and I'm going to set that line in. Make sure you nudge those ears forward if they're leaning back or laying flat, just to help you see the full circle. We want to make sure that our line is meeting up to where the tip of our ear starts. Now I'm going to pick up all this cheek hair because we want our Westie head to turn into a sphere rather than just focusing on the outer circle. I'm going to angle my scissors to make sure it follows that same line that I set on the outside of the head, so that way the whole circle matches together. You're going to want to make sure that the circle comes up and around behind that ear. If you forget the hair back here, it can end up making your Westie head look a bit more boxy, like a square or a rectangle, versus that nice round spherical head. I'm also going to go over this chin and make sure that that throat area is really, really tight. I don't want my Westie to have a double chin and look thick. As we work our circle around to the front of the nose, we want to make sure that the whiskers right in the front here are also blending into that sphere that we've made. And now we're going to make the other side match and come together. I'm going to start with the bottom line again, meeting the front, so that way I make sure that I'm making it the same length as the right side. And then I'm making sure to meet it to the point of the other side of the ear, right where that tip starts. Once that line is set, then I'm going to lift all of the cheek hair, so that way I can make it a more sphere shape versus just focusing on the outer circle. And then I use my blenders to help blend all of the pieces together, so there's no obvious start or stop lines. Of course, don't forget the hair behind the ears. I'm still giving those ears a gentle push forward so I can see the whole picture. If you groom a head with an ear in radar mode, then you're going to end up having that permanent tilted head look. We don't want our Westie to have a mullet, so we're going to comb back all of that hair, and anything that sticks out past the occiput, we're going to blend off. You can always do this step when you're clippering the body by just brushing all of the hair back and starting your clipper work a couple finger lengths behind the occiput, but I still do this step when I'm working on the head just to make sure that I didn't miss any hairs. While I'm back there making sure that the head is blending into the neck well, I'm also going to check all of my ear points by brushing the hair back and trimming anything that sticks up. I don't typically have the grooming loop on here because it's hard to blend with the chunk of cloth in my way. With a dog that sinks its head, just take his ear and lightly pinch between your thumb while the rest of your fingers hold up the weight of the head. When you're all done, then you can replace the grooming loop to make sure that he doesn't sink his head anymore. As I'm going around making sure that everything is blended, I'm going to fold the ear in half and trim anything that sticks out beyond the leather. This is really nice for those shorter heads too, because it allows you to blend the sides of the head into the tip of the ear. And that will complete our first circle, which is the front of the face circle that you see. There are a couple other circles that we focus on with the Westie to make that iconic head, and the second circle is going to be the one that shapes the muzzle. I'm lifting all of the hair here and pretending as if this was all standing. I don't want anything sticking out that's going to get caught into the mouth when eating or drinking water. I also don't want the sides of my muzzles to be too long either, as that will make the Westie head look really heavy in the front. A quick look at the circles. So we have the muzzle circle, the front circle, and then the profile circle. And all of these circles should be combined together to make one balanced Westie head. Since we have that front circle to the length of our liking, we're going to make sure that the muzzle circle is about the same length. I'm going to fluff up these hairs with my comb and sometimes my fingers to make sure that none of these hairs are going to stick out past that frontal circle. And while we build out our muzzle, we want to make sure that these little beady eyes are deeply set underneath a heavy brow. There should be no heavy tufts in front of the eyes. In the show ring, if there's hair in front of the eyes, it's probably because the eye is too large or not of the right shape. But when you have a beautiful eye set and a pretty little expression, the last thing you want to do is hide that. Once I like the expression that the dog is giving me, then I'm going to take all of that work and mess it all up. I really want to make sure that there's no random hairs that have hidden, been tucked away, or that's going to pop out once the dog shakes when the owner goes to take it home. You have to keep in mind that the Westies that you see at the dog shows and on the commercials have really hard, hand-stripped heads and are teased up and sprayed. Once they are done, the product is completely washed out. Putting product in a pet head isn't ideal because it won't be washed out for another 4 weeks. I typically like to clean out the fleas on my grooms. It's a place where a lot of bacteria can grow, and with less hair, usually that can keep down the stink of a mouth. For a Westie, it can take out some of that nasty color that builds up there as well to make the dog appear more white. If the dog has a lot of mouth staining, then it's just impossible to remove all of it, but his is pretty mild. I really pull at the hairs around the mouth because a lot of hairs like to hide in there, and then they get gross and wet and they can get pretty stinky. And of course some good head scratches to see if I've missed any of the hairs on the head. I'm going to pick out his finishing touches, and he does a beautiful shakeout for me to make sure that everything is in good place. And that will finish our Westie head. If you have any questions, please be sure to put those in the comments below. I do try to get to all of them. And if you could give Tyler a big thumbs up for being such a patient model, he would really appreciate it. Thanks for stopping by, and happy grooming!